Hey, Jeff, Mike Frisch calling Taiwan On Podcast. How you doing, man?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Good. We want to welcome you to our podcast. We're running a 13-week series. We go every Wednesday night here at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on our Facebook page. And, of course, this podcast will be available on Spotify and several other podcast apps as well. So, Jeff, welcome to Taiwan On, and tell us what you got going on. You're traveling right now, and you're on your way home from a tournament, correct?
Yeah, guys, we're on our way in from Lake Champlain, just middle of nowhere on I-30, just crossing to Texas. So happy to be back in the South and be close to home. We're just a few hours away, so we're getting closer.
Cool. So safe travels, Jeff, and thanks for being here. And let's talk Lake Champlain. What went down on Champlain?
Oh, that lake was, it was fishing a little off. To be honest with you, we really caught the tail end of the spawn there. We actually didn't get the spawn. We got the post-spawn funk. It really showed that lake did not fish as well as it should have fished. It's getting a lot of pressure. COVID, having everybody fish working from home, has a lot more people on the bodies of water, a lot more tournaments, a lot more events up there on those bodies of water than they're used to. Big events like ours, Toyota Series, even the other organizations that have events there. So it's really taking its toll on those fisheries as far as the amount of pressure that they're getting. They're not used to that. So, but nonetheless, there's a lot of bass there. Big body of water, big waves, big wind. And it's an experience to be there for sure.
Sure. So to talk about a little bit, what were some of the predominant patterns for those post-spawn, funky smallmouth?
What's crazy is, they were there. They're moving constantly this time of the year, and the predominant patterns is just typical smallmouth fishing. We didn't really get any topwater bite going, which is a really strong post-spawn pattern there. Still just pitching a drop shot, pitching a Ned rig around, and then actually just targeting individual fish because the big groups of fish were out. You're talking out 50, 60 feet of water, and they're not really holding on shoals or anything for the most part. It just seemed like they were out on balls of bait, and those are really hard fish to target.
Sure. Those fish obviously moving then nonstop, and here today, gone tomorrow, I'm guessing.
Very much so. And that's I did okay there. I was finished like third the first day in our first round, and then dropped down to like sixth the second day. And, I was catching largemouth, smallmouth mixed, and then, smallmouth predominantly. And then the bait moved, the wind switched, and the fish just absolutely left me. That's such a big body of water, and it's hard to break down when the wind blows. You're not able to idle around and look and do things that you normally would because the waves are so big there. And just tried to force things, make it work, but still had a good finish there. Made the knockout round and stayed in the top 10 in points in Angler of the Year. So that's always a plus. And we got one more event to go on Lake St. Clair.
So talk a little bit, Jeff, if you would, about that format. Walk us through, kind of day by day, how that breaks down in terms of, how you get to that last day.
So Major League Fishing is it's truly the most fun bass fishing that I've ever had. Meaning you don't have to worry about just concentrating on any particular bait, any particular style. You fish the current day, the moment, and the conditions. But getting back to the question was, so we fish 40 anglers each day. We have Group A, Group B, 80 total guys. 40 anglers fish the first day, which is Group A. And then you get the day off. Then the next group goes, 40 anglers. And then you go back, Group A will fish again. And then Group B fishes its second day. Once those two groups have fished 2 days each, they cut the field to 40 guys. They cut 20 guys off each field. And once you go to the knockout round, that's where we take 8 guys from the knockout round. 40 guys fish for 8 positions. So there's a winner from Group A, advance straight to the championship round. And there's 40 guys fishing for 8 spots. Everybody's weight is zeroed, and they go back out on the knockout round and fish for the 8 positions to go to the championship round.
Okay. So, Jeff, you just cut out there a little bit for us at the end. Thomas, you want to go ahead and see if we can... Yeah, the call just dropped here. We'll go ahead and...
Not so easy to do this on the road, is it?
Nope. So basically, Jeff, if we got this right, after the first 4 days, each group has fished 2 days, half the field is gone. Then each group fishes for a winner, which makes the championship the last day. And then those remaining anglers fish for those last 8 spots of the top 10 in the knockout round, correct?
Yeah. So the knockout round, there's 40 guys fishing for 8 spots to go to the championship round. That's correct.
And then in the championship round, all the weights are zeroed, and we just start over?
That is right. You go back to zero in the championship round, and it's anybody's ball game. That's what makes it so fun, so exciting. It's about fish management. It's about fishing the moment, fishing, what the lake has to offer that day, and not always about just fishing a spot or something along those lines. It's really more geared toward anglers and what they want to do when they go fishing. Like, just say that you don't get to fish every day. You only get one day on the water. You don't get to go fish spots. And the wind's blowing hard, you're fishing. So that's what it's all about, showing people how to fish those moments, how to fish the conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I pick up different baits instead of just picking up one particular bait, keep it in your hand all day and trying to catch 5 bass,
Right.
and hoping you catch 5 big ones. That's the traditional way of bass fishing. I get it. And there's nothing wrong with it. I cut my teeth on it, and I still admire it. However, I do enjoy this format more. Right.
And so that's the other part, too, for our listeners is every fish, not the 5 biggest, every fish is provided it makes the minimum length counts.
2 pounds.
Right.
Yes,
so
2 pound minimum.
Yep. So every fish over 2 pound counts. So if you catch 5, you keep fishing, right? And they all add together.
That's correct. And then you catch as many as you can.
Sure. So, I mean, in my mind, and Jeff, I spent, quite a few years hardly tournament fish anymore, but spent a lot of years tournament fishing where, we fished for, when I started in buddy tournaments, it was an 8 fish limit, and then it went to 6, and some of them are at 5 now, but we fished for the 5 or 6 biggest fish we could. And if somebody else caught 30 and you caught 5, but your biggest 5 were bigger than their biggest 5, you won. So to me, this probably favors maybe the more talented anglers and those who are able to adjust and adapt on the fly. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Definitely on the adjustment and on the fly and fishing the condition for the day. That is a huge deal because the thing about fishing is it's ever changing every day. Whether the wind blows one day, whether it's sunny one day, whether it's storming one day, whether, any condition can change fishing. And if a guy's able to read that and understand it, he's able to excel in the format. And, that's what most people do when they go to the lake. They go and fish. They want to go catch as many as they can. They don't just go and fish for, 4 or 5 bites, or 6 bites. They try to catch as many as they can because they want to have a good time. We're not taking anything away from a traditional 5 fish, 6 fish limit. We're not bashing that. We're all fishermen. And the thing is we want to push the sport toward everyone, toward the kids, the generations who are not out there to tournament fish that just want to catch more fish. And if they're able to watch the Major League Fishing events, they're able to see the adjustments, they're able to see the bait, and they're able to pick that up and make themselves better anglers versus just, hey, I'm going to force this punching rig all day, be 5 and hope that they're the right 5,
Right. Yep. That makes a lot of sense. So, Jeff, let's switch gears a little bit. You're a 5-time FLW Cup champion or qualifier. So that in itself is very, very admirable. And when you and I visited yesterday on the phone, you talked about some of your fishing strength speed and frogging and flipping. We've talked quite a bit about flipping. We had Denny Brower on last week, and we had Mark Menendez on a while back. But let's talk frog fishing a little bit. Talk about that during the heat of summer. First off, what do you look for in terms of where do we fish a frog during the summer? What kind of cover?
Well, first of all, a misconception in the summer is that all the fish go offshore and they go as deep as they can go. It's different up north because your guys' lakes don't thermocline quite like they do in the south. and in the Midwest. But in the South, the Lake Thermocline, the fish aren't allowed. They're not able to go out deep. They're not able to go deeper than 20 a lot of times because there's no oxygen below 20 foot. That's what a thermocline is. And so the fish they're forced back to the shallow. So they're just like us. They want to be in the shade. They want to be in the cooler water a lot of times, meaning this is something that's hard for people to process. A lot of times the shallower water is cooler than in the shade than it is, out in the sunshine. Mm-hmm. Meaning if you can find an overhang, if you can find a grass patch that's shallow, whether it's slop, whether it's, grass, whether it's a lay down, whatever it is, those fish will use the shade to their advantage in the shallow water. And those are the types of things that you start to look for in the summer. And a lot of times fish will feed up and when the sun is shining, it's just like us. We can't look up at the sun and get a clear look because it's blinding. Mm-hmm. Same to a fish. They can't see up as well. All they're feeding on is the movement a lot of times. So that's why the topwater bait is so effective. Frogging, just like a KVD Splash or a Splash Junior or anything like that. Those are all big players this time of the year because fish are feeding up in that shallower water. Now, obviously, there's many tactics, many ways to do it, but those are some of my favorite ways to do it, and obviously a frog is one of those.
Okay. So talk then, you gave us, a little bit location-wise. All right, let's say, here in the North Country, we have lily pads, and, we throw frogs and retrieve them across the top of pads. Talk a little bit about retrieve. How do you typically retrieve that frog, say, this time of the year?
So there's a couple ways to do it. The first, your first key is when you find those lily pads, you want to find out where those fish are holding. Are they holding right in the heart of the pads? Meaning like there's a patch of pads. Are they in the heart or are they holding to the edges? Where are they? And that will help you identify how you can fish for them. If they're on the edges, a lot of times you get a frog that moves a lot faster, like, our gurgle toad or something from Strike King, where you can just reel it and they'll chase it out off the edge of the pads and eat it. And then if they're not, then you can also throw like KVD Sexy Frog, throw it right in the middle, right up on the pads, and just work it a little bit slower, a lot slower actually, through the pads and allow those fish to blow up through the pads and feed on that. That's a big key. So that's two different styles that you can approach it as. And then once you figure out the best way that particular day to fish, because it will change, mm-hmm. Then you're able to kind of dial it in a little bit better. But a gurgle toad's a great way to cover a lot of water. If you're getting misses on that gurgle toad, then obviously you probably want to slow down and then pick up a sexy frog that's a lot slower and a lot more methodical and give those fish an opportunity to slow it and eat it and swim up and eat it, whether blow up through the mat, blow up through the lily pads and actually get it or off the edge.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So next question then, I'm fishing that topwater, that KVD Sexy Frog, and that fish blows up. Okay. My first inclination is I got to set the hook right now, but that's not really that's the amateur way of doing it. Let's say, talk about that if you would.
So you're right. The big thing on frog fishing a lot of times for guys is as soon as they see that blow up, they want to go ahead and set the hook. I mean, it's just so exciting. That's part of it. But the reality of it is you really got to let those fish get that frog in their mouth, and a lot of times go back down and swim down or away from you so you can get that hook set that you want into those fish. And that alone comes back into play of what rod are you using when you go to actually fish for those fish? Because if you're using a super stiff rod and a long rod, your reaction time is going to take up that line quicker, and there's no flex in that rod, then you're going to yank that bait away from those fish all too often, unless you truly have the patience to let that fish eat that frog and swim away with it just a second and a half to turn. And that's why you miss a lot of fish. So rod choice is a huge deal when coming into fishing for a frog. I'll just go ahead and tell you guys, I really like a medium heavy rod when fishing for a frog. If I'm making long casts, I'll fish with a 7.3. And if I'm making shorter target casts, I'll fish with a 7-foot frog rod, medium heavy. and that gives me a little bit of if I get antsy or if I make a premature, pull on a fish when he blows up, then I have that little bit of bend, a little bit of parabolic action to give that fish that split second to have that frog longer than it would if you had a really stiff rod where you would just yank it right away from him.
Sure. So then that leads me to my next question. What about line choice? What
Obviously, any time that I'm fishing a frog around cover, I'm going to go with a braided line. We have the tour grade braided line Strike King has out. I have put that thing through the paces, and it's great braided line. I really like a 50 to a 65 pound test braid. Really depends on how big a fish I'm fishing for. No offense, but up north, I really like to throw 50 a lot more than I do anywhere else because I'm not catching 7, 8, 9 pounders a lot of times. I'm just catching 2, 3, 4, and if I get lucky, a 5 or 6 pounder. Not that those fish aren't strong and couldn't handle 65, but I feel like I can make longer casts with 50. And my reel holds more of it, so on and so forth. It's just I feel more comfortable with it.
Okay, that's good. So we've talked rod, we've talked line. Let's talk about reel, gear ratio, how fast you reel, and cover that for us, please.
So I fish with a high-speed reel majority of the time, whether I'm fishing a frog or a jerk bait or anything or flipping. But since we're going to talk frogging, obviously I really like a 7.5 to 1, or I will actually go all the way up to an 8 to 1. We have the super duties that are 8 to 1, and that's a really high gear ratio reel. And what that does is it allows me to make those long casts and just say, when you land a lot of times and you land right in the middle of one of those, pad patches, a bass will immediately blow up on it. That's just their reaction. And you have that reel to take up all that line. If you have a little bow in your line from making a long cast in the wind, and winch that fish right out of that heavy cover and not give him the opportunity to get the upper hand on you, because once he gets you going in the right direction, he's going to pretty much manipulate the fight. Where, if you have the wrong speed reel, but if you have a really high retrieve reel, you get to own that fish and get him coming to you first, and you won't lose near as many fish.
Good. That's great. That's great info. And the thing about it, we used to think back in the old days that we had to have that lower gear ratio to reel because we needed that power, that strength to yank that fish. But like that Super Duty reel, that's got all the power you need, even in those high gear ratios, right?
Yes, and that's what they make the Super Duties for. A lot of times, that is a power reel. The handles, we on like the Pro TIs and on our Hypermag reels, those are carbon fiber handles, and they are meant for heavy action fishing. However, that Super Duty has that aluminum handle on it, and it's meant for just power fishing 101. And that's why a lot of times you'll see me fish my frogs with those particular reels, is because there's no flex in the handles. It's all transfer power straight to the reel and straight to that line and getting that fish coming my direction.
And that's important, Jeff, because even here in the North Country, if you get a 3 pounder, say, and he's buried back in the pads, or we fish like up on Leech Lake, some of the wild rice fields, if you get even a medium-sized fish and he starts to go the wrong way, if you have any lack of power, and he gets the upper hand, like you said, you're in trouble.
Absolutely. And I mean, we work too hard to get those bites, and that's why we use the best line, the best rod, the best reel that we can get, because at the end of the day, if you're out there fishing and you're skimping on your line or you're skimping on your reel and it costs you a fish, and especially if it's in a derby or in an event of some sort, all that work was for nothing just because you went a little light on your tackle. So, every advantage that you can get, use it, because I promise you the fish are using every advantage they got.
Absolutely. They don't want to come in the boat as much as you want them in the boat.
That's exactly right.
Last question, Jeff, in regards to frog fishing, then let's talk about frog color. Now, I have fishing friends who say color of frog doesn't matter. I have different opinions on that than they do, but walk us through your thoughts on frog color, and what's your favorite? That sexy frog comes in a lot of sexy colors now. Talk about that if you would.
And, to be honest with you, I was a pretty diehard basic color frog guy for a very long time. Fished the frog a lot. And, And in certain lakes and certain areas, you really have to pay attention to what the fish are feeding on. Obviously, if you pull into pads and you hear, a frog, up there ribbiting and you see them jumping around, because a lot of times I do, and you look at the belly of that frog, if you can see him from a distance and you notice that his belly is white, hey, I'm going with that white belly frog. And a lot of times you pull into a pad area or you pull into some grass and there's brim everywhere, and you've got that tan and green. I'm going with that tan frog or that tan and green, profile, because that's what the bass are feeding on. A lot of times you can throw, I even throw a lot of a shad colored frog around a lot with a either a pearl belly or a glitter belly on it. And that's just because a lot of times they're feeding on shad. Matching the hatch is pretty key, regardless. Now, if you're fishing super sloppy stuff, you know that obviously those fish are not getting a great look at that frog. However, when you pull that thing off of the edge of a pad and you think that fish, and it rolls, because when you're walking a frog back and forth, it's throwing those little details. A lot of times in that super clear water that you guys have, they're able to get a look at it. And I'm telling you, color makes a big difference. Dark colors, you can never go wrong with a dark color on a frog if the light is right. And then also you have to keep that natural presentation, and also have an outgoing frog, meaning like a white one or something that's a little bit more easy to see. Those fish key on that a lot of times, and it just depends on if they're sight feeding or if they're actually just blowing up on the movement. And you can usually figure that out by where they're staying in those pads or in that grass or in that vegetation. We don't just fish a frog around grass. A lot of times you're fishing it around laydowns and things like that, where you can't fish a KVD splash or something with treble hooks on it. So you have to have those basic colors, and then you also have to have the natural colors too, because at the end of the day, if you don't have the right color and you're able to, you miss it, then those fish will actually come up, look at your bait. I've seen it too many times where a fish will come out, wake up to your bait, and it's not what they thought it was when they get there, and then they swim away from it. So I really try to have the right color frog on hand.
That makes a lot of sense. I said that the last question was the last question. This is the last question regarding frog fishing. Do you do anything in terms of modifying the frog? I know guys who, trim the trailers, bend the hooks, all that. Do you do anything like that?
Absolutely. Everybody's going to do something different. I know guys that tell me that they don't need to touch their frogs out of the package, so on and so forth. And every frog is different. Everybody that makes a frog is different. So each guy's going to have their own little detail, but there's a couple things that I really like to do to my frogs that a lot of people don't know about. Obviously, you touched on a couple with bending the hooks out. I do like a slight bend on my hook out. Depending on the vegetation I'm fishing, you'll know if you get them bent out too far, because you'll start snagging, lily pads, grass, and it becomes a pain in the rear end real fast. But I do like to bend them out a short bit. I also like to trim my legs back quite a bit, and I like to trim one just a little shorter than the other. It helps my frog walk, I feel like, pull to one direction. So I like to do that. Maybe a quarter inch actually shorter on one side than the other. Doesn't matter, whichever one you want to trim. And then the last thing is I really like to sometimes either I can shove a rattle in a frog, and or I will keep a couple BBs from the pellet gun at the house in the boat in my box, and I will stick a couple BBs in there, which gives me a little added weight, and also just gives them to clack together a little bit to give that frog a little extra sound if you're in that open water sometimes. Just something that I do, and it doesn't mean that it makes them bite it more, but it's something that I feel like it gives me a little extra weight and it does give a little extra sound in those certain situations. So something to keep in your back pocket, something to experiment with, and don't be afraid to do your own thing sometimes.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Jeff, last thing let's talk about. You and I have a plan. We're going to let our viewers and our listeners in. You've committed to come to Minnesota to fish with us on Fishing the Midwest TV in October. Have you been to the land of 10,000 lakes before, and have you fished bass here?
I have. I'm looking forward to coming up with you guys and doing that. I'm really looking forward to those October months, because I know how crazy your bass fishing gets when they start putting on that winter weight. We were there last year for the Major League Fishing World Championship. There was, I believe, 14 of us that qualified for that, and we were up in the Minnesota area. And I wish I could tell you exactly which lakes it was what we were on, but they literally pretty much blindfold you and take you to a lake out in the middle of nowhere and drop you off and say good luck. Whoever let the best man win, and that's why I really love the Major League Fishing format. When you don't know where you're going in our Cup event, you're driven out there, and I got to experience your some of your bodies of water there, and absolutely love what you guys have. It's a special area, that you can go to the smaller bodies of water that may not get the pressure that these big bodies of water that we continuously go to back and forth. And, they have a lot of great fishing, smallmouth, largemouth, and obviously, anything else that goes up there. You guys have walleye, pickerel, pike, so on and so forth, and brim fishing. I mean, you guys have it all, and it's just a great area to be in, and you guys are very blessed to have it.
Thank you. We are. And I promise you, my friend, we will do our best to put you on some smallmouth, and hopefully we can get on some of those big largemouth too. But we're really looking forward to having you up, and we'll visit more as we get closer to that.
That will be, I look forward to that, and I can't wait to see what it has to offer and where we wind up going, because, new water is really exciting to me. A lot of guys get intimidated by new water, and my advice to people, don't be intimidated by new water. Embrace it and enjoy it, because it's like learning every time you go to the lake versus you go to the same lake you're used to all the time. And you're going to fish the same areas. Go try those new areas. Go try those new bodies of water and explore. You'll open up a side of fishing that you have soon forgot about, it seems like.
Great advice. Thanks, Jeff. We will catch up with you soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. So that was Jeff Sprague. Jeff is Bass Pro Tour and Major League Fishing angler from Texas. Jeff is qualified for 5 Forrest L. Wood Championship Cup events, veteran bass guy, outstanding angler. And as we referenced at the end there, Jeff is coming to Minnesota to join us as a guest on a Fishing the Midwest television episode that we will be shooting in October, airing again first quarter of next year.